This is the sun, the source of our energy, our light, the reason we all exist. But it could also be the reason for our demise. However, India's solar mission plans to help us prepare for such events. Why? Because it can save humanity as we know it. The sun produces something called the solar wind, a stream of particles that washes throughout the solar system and is monitored through multiple satellites. This solar wind can be thought of as space weather, with satellites acting as weather stations across the solar system to monitor this solar wind in real time. However, sometimes the sun unleashes storms upon the planets, and these are referred to as solar storms. These solar storms pose a serious threat to humanity as a whole, because these events can cause a breakdown in our technological society. That means no navigation, no phones, no water, no food, and almost quite literally the end of civilization. A good example is the Quebec blackouts in 1989. Which were caused by inaction to protect the electricity grid from a small solar storm, which eventually knocked out the Quebec electricity grid. It is why it is super important to ensure that we are monitoring the sun with precise, accurate satellites so that we can prepare ourselves for such events. This is because while we can't prevent the fact that solar storms do occur, we can prevent their side effects. We've already talked about the difficulty of getting India's solar mission, Aditya L1, to where it is right now. You can find the link to the video in the description below. But the bigger question that is being asked is, what is Aditya L1 going to study? Well, besides understanding more about how solar storms form and the dynamics of how such systems evolve over time, Aditya L1 is also studying the following things. Number 1. Understanding the corona. The corona forms one layer in the sun's atmosphere, and astronomers are baffled by its properties. Why? Because the corona is way hotter than it should be. While the sun's surface is approximately 5,000 degrees Celsius, the sun's corona is over 1,000,000 degrees, and no one knows why. Scientists expected the corona to be much cooler than the sun's surface. And this mystery has led to countless missions, including the famed Parker Solar Probe by NASA. As of now, one strong hypothesis suggests that very small solar flares heat up the corona to such temperatures, while the sun's surface remains at approximately 5,000 degrees Celsius. This hypothesis is referred to as the coronal heating theory, and there's been growing evidence to support this hypothesis, but nothing decisive has been confirmed as of yet. The Aditya L1 mission aims to solve this mystery once and for all. Number 2. Understanding the sun's magnetic field. The sun consists of a soup of charged particles, called a plasma. We know that moving charged particles generate a magnetic field, and this magnetic field dictates how those charged particles move. Understanding solar storms requires us to also understand the magnetic field dynamics around the sun, and how this magnetic field evolves and interacts with itself over time. The sun's magnetic field is actually the source of solar storms. Sometimes the magnetic field gets tangled into knots, and when one of those knots breaks, a great deal of energy is released, creating a solar storm. It is why Aditya L1 has a separate instrument dedicated to measuring these charged particles and the magnetic fields of the sun, to understand the evolution of such systems. Number 3. Identify new processes. The solar mission also plans to identify and thoroughly study processes that occur in each of the sun's layers, from the chromosphere to the corona to the sun's surface. Many of these processes can be studied in more detail to further gain understanding about the telltale signs for solar storms and other eruptive events, and could help us on Earth predict and prepare for such events in the future, saving our electricity grid and also billions to trillions of dollars. The Aditya L1 mission quite literally will aid us in keeping us safe on Earth and protecting us from cosmic threats. If anything does happen, we will be prepared. But a more important question is, how did Aditya 1 get to space? How do we get things to space? To learn more about the basics of rocket science, just click the video you see on your screen. If you aren't already, make sure to join the Discord server to get a sneak peek and early access to all the content we produce. Links are in the description below.